All right, welcome everyone to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. I'm Joshua Fletcher. People call me Fletch, and today we have a very special guest on, Dan Anton, coming to us from Puerto Rico. Dan is a guy that I've met probably, I think 2013, maybe, Dan. Sounds
Yeah,
about right.
that
Yeah.
sounds about right.
Yeah, we were at a live conference together, and I had the very, very fortunate experience of spending an evening with he and Colin Klinkert at a bar, just the three of us, and I was a complete newbie online. I knew nothing. I could swing a hammer and turn a wrench, and the internet was still a mystery to me. But he and Colin both kind of opened up and shared a lot, not just personally, but professionally, that really helped me see things from a different perspective. And I think today that's kind of one of the main goals that we want people to be able to come away from today with, is being able to kind of see the world through Dan's eyes a little bit. Kind of one of the biggest things that I've been able to do is I've met people that are entrepreneurs who have lived lives differently than me, is just realizing that some of the things that I believed were true about life and the world or whatever I was doing were not necessarily that way. And looking through the eyes of somebody else who could help me see that really, really helped me in a lot of different ways. So today I'm fortunate just to get to have another conversation with Dan and hopefully talk about some of those things that do the same for the people listening. So Dan, welcome today. We have David Hood on as well. David, say hello.
Hello. It's funny that you mentioned him and Colin Clinker, which hopefully we'll find some time to get him on, because there was a time, Dan, I think it was a couple years later, I want to say 2015-ish, where it was me, you, and Colin Clinker as well.
I feel like that's how we met as well. Yes.
Yes, that's the time.
Colin is the catalyst here.
Yeah. Which I think he would revel in that and being called the catalyst.
Yeah, pretty much. And drinks. I think some drinks were probably involved as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And I have a very good impression of Dan, but I'm actually interested to hear his story as well. I get the feeling, and Dan, feel free to correct me, that he seems more like a walk softly, carry a big stick kind of guy. I think he's been doing a lot of badass things in our industry for a while, and he doesn't brag a whole lot about it. So Dan, I give you full permission to brag about yourself. In fact, I'm insisting that you brag about yourself in this, because it will be helpful to our listeners.
Okay, well, just don't let my wife hear this one, then she'll never hear the end of
it. And before we get started, where can someone learn more about you and what you have to offer?
Well, you could go to my website. Smartengage.com is really my main business right now. It's just smartengage.com, and you can look me up there and reach out to me. I have a live chat on there as well that I monitor from time to time. If something needs to get escalated, someone needs to reach me, I'm usually pretty available.
And what happens on Smart Engage? What's going on there?
Basically I built what I like to consider the world's smartest autoresponder. So think of combining a typical email autoresponder like your Aweber, GetResponse, your Active Campaign, that kind of thing, but then combine it with Facebook Messenger tools, like some popular ones would be ManyChat or Mobile Monkey, some of those, right? And then also web push notifications. And then most recently, we are about to push live some SMS text messaging as well. So we do a complete automation tool where you can actually do some really smart automations where, let's say someone doesn't open their email from you, you can track that and then follow up with them on a text message. Or if they don't click a link in your Facebook Messenger, you can follow up with them on email. So it's whatever you really want to do, and you can build out these powerful campaigns.
Oh, that's so awesome. I did not know that existed. So I'm already excited here to give that a try. Because that I see how that's super valuable, integrating all those pieces.
Yeah, a big part to really work on was just the email side of things. The rest of it, is just more working with APIs, but the email side of things is still one of those things where you need to be sure you're doing right by the customer. Deliverability is obviously huge. Hitting the inbox is huge. So I partnered with some really smart people to take care of that, with me.
All right. Well, cool.
Yeah, I got to hear about that for the first time, actually at the same live event that I met Dan, but years later, last year or two, a little over a year ago now. Dan presented what he'd put together there and how it worked. Very, very interesting. And as far as it being like even an offer, it was a really easy offer to see yourself using. So yeah, I'm glad that that's still rocking and rolling for you, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm sorry, David.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, to me, the litmus test is, do I use this? Would I use this? And I've switched my entire business to using exclusively this tool for all of my automations, all of my marketing. So in my mind, that's why I can sell it, and do so knowing that it's worth selling because I use it.
Sweet. So if you do any email marketing, check out Smart Engage. Go to there right now, and it looks like they have a free trial. So what's to lose?
Thank you.
All
so
right.
so how did you get to this point, Dan? Because I know you've offered solutions to people kind of in the digital marketing industry, at least two different ones that I know of. But like what kind of brought you to this, kind of the most recent backstory of kind of getting into tools and automation for digital marketers?
Wow. So should we go all the way back?
Yeah, go for it. I started with like being 9 years old when I told my story. So yeah,
we've
got time.
It was a Tuesday. I was born at 8:05 a.m. Well, in college, so I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but, in our generation, we kind of were raised as the internet was becoming a thing, right? So I've always been fascinated by it. So it's funnily enough, in 1995, 96, one of my best friends and I in high school, I think we were sophomores or juniors. And, we had this idea on AOL, that was it. That's how you got to the internet back then, at least, for newbies like us. And I had this idea to buy video games from a local video game store. It's called Funko Land. I don't even know if you guys know what that is, but New Jersey was very popular. They could get all kinds of hard to find video games for any system available at the time. And our whole business model was just arbitrage, where we would buy it and then sell it for $5 more plus shipping and handling. And we would literally get on Facebook, on AOL, and it was spam. We kind of started the spam revolution. Maybe we'd message people who put video games in their profile. We could find all these people, and we'd say, hey, we can get you any video game that you want, any system that you want, period. And we're embellishing a bit, because if they asked for something that we couldn't find, we just said, well, it's out of order right now. We got you on back order. But for a lot of the stuff, we'd be able to get it, and there was no cost involved, because my friend's grandma would drive us to the video game store, and we'd get it, and then we'd mail it off. And here we are thinking, we're doing pretty well. We're making a few $100 a month on the side, just doing nothing but driving to the video game store and selling them. No cost, no inventory being held. So that always fascinated me. So I think that stuck with me for a long time. Fast forward into college, I had some success. I was majoring in computer science at the time, and then I realized it's a little too much numbers and stuff for me to really enjoy. So I switched that to a minor, and then I majored in business, which, I'll get to my life in the Army, but obviously that had nothing to do with me joining the Army at that point, useless degree at that point in my life. But in college, I was able to kind of strike gold again with eBay. So I started, it started off building computers, buying parts and doing that. And then I would buy concert tickets. So I would see concert tickets for sale that I knew would sell out, and I'd buy a bunch of them, and then I'd sell them for more. Just little things like that. Just always trying to see opportunities and hustle a little bit, and just realizing that you can capitalize a lot if you strike when the time is right. And then I had a really good success. I didn't even play World of Warcraft, but I saw that this guy had a guide that had a lot of good reviews, but he wasn't selling a ton of it. So I asked him if I could buy it with rights to resell it. And all I did was make the eBay page really pretty with graphics and all kinds of stuff. I was learning Photoshop at the time. So I just made a really good, essentially a sales page on eBay. And I made it so you can, have the unlimited quantity type of thing. And that thing was just printing money every day. It was just I'd be in class and I'd see PayPal notifications. This is 2000 at the time, really, 2000 and 2001. And that always, I was just interested with making money online. It's that's the niche, but that always interested me. So it wasn't until 9/11 happened that I really kind of switched gears. For me, all this online stuff was never something I thought I was going to do as a career. It was always just kind of like fun stuff to do on the side. I never really thought of how to like go 100% with it. So I was actually interning with Solomon Smith Barney to be an analyst. Didn't really like it that much. Then 9/11 happened, and I thought, okay, I always thought about maybe joining the military, and that kind of solidified it for me. So I did that, fell in love with it. I was in for almost 10 years. I honestly would probably still be in right now, but I was in the infantry. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the different branches within the Army, but infantry essentially the ground troops, right? And I got injured to the point where I couldn't do that particular job anymore, and I realized, they offered me a desk, right? They said you can stay in, but you probably have to switch your job to this or Signal Corps or something like that. And it wasn't the worst thing, I wasn't like. I wasn't completely depressed about it, but it definitely changed what I thought I wanted to do. And I kind of came to the realization that if I'm going to sit at a desk, I'm going to do it for myself and just kind of figure that part out. It's kind of, there was a lot of other stuff going in there, at that time as well. I was actually, I'm an ex-wife now, so there's all kinds of stuff going on with there where, getting a little, upset, and it was losing my identity. I'm getting out of the Army. My then wife is, wanting to leave. I think it was partly, scared of what the future held. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I always had this belief, even though it didn't really make sense at the time, that things were going to be okay. I was going to figure this out. And for me, I didn't want to take a step back. I didn't want to move home or anything like that. So I had about 3 months or so until my ETS date, which is the date you get out of the Army, and I knew I had to figure something out. So my brother at the time was doing SEO for an agency, or he was working at an agency as their marketing manager, and I just kind of had that in the back of my mind. So I started looking at forums. It was Warrior Forum back then, and Backlinks Forum and stuff like that. And I started trying to figure out how to rank these websites, and I started ranking Google sites, AdSense sites, and I started having a little bit of success. But really the big realization for me was just seeing all of these little untapped voids in the market where I kept seeing the same questions coming up over and over again. So one in particular was, how do I get my backlinks indexed, right? That was such a huge issue at that time. We're talking 2000 and probably 2009, 2010 timeframe, maybe even 2011, where people were asking this over and over again. And there were a couple tools out there, but they were super complicated. You had to put it on your own server sometimes. You had to do this and that. So I bought pretty much everything trying to figure this out for myself. And then I kind of had this idea, and I started writing it on a notepad. And I was just like, okay, if I take what this guy's doing here on the server, and maybe I could just recreate that and create a platform where people can just do it from the front end, and now they have access. And in the back end, all this stuff is happening automatically for them, that they don't have to set up themselves anymore, because I just feel like it's super complicated. I figured it out, and it wasn't easy for me, and I'm pretty techie. So that was kind of my thought process on it. So I hired one developer on, I think it was freelancer.com at the time, and didn't really know anything about outsourcing, didn't really know anything about hiring. It was my first experience, and I kind of got burned by the guy. It started looking pretty good. It was developing into the product I thought it would be, but he just kept arguing with me about stuff when I wanted something done some way. And he had this chip on his shoulder. He's like, no, I want it done this way. I'm like, I thought I hired you, buddy. So he got to the point where he got so mad that he just left. And I was out, I don't remember. I think it was $5,000 or $6,000, which at the time was a lot, You don't make a ton in the Army. So I had a decent amount of savings that I'm trying to really push into these ideas because I just believe in them so much. So I actually considered just abandoning the project completely. I was just like, I got burned. This is probably not going to work. But as I started kind of getting back into the forums and stuff, I saw the question being asked again, and it kind of rekindled my passion, my fire to get this going. So I found another guy. I did a little bit better on the vetting process this time in terms of hiring and just doing more questions up front. Ended up getting a pretty good developer, built this out. I wouldn't say it was the greatest thing ever, but it was a good alpha beta version. Got it out there. It worked exactly the way I wanted it to. And I posted it in one of the forums as a sales thread. and it started gaining a little bit of notoriety, and the reviews kept coming in and coming in. And as that happened, it was getting more and more popular. And it wasn't until, do you guys know Jonathan Ledger? You guys know that name?
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So he came up with like the best spinner and a bunch of other tools. You know, he's genius, kind of introvert. He's not really in these circles because he doesn't want to be, but he's a genius with developing software. So he hits me up on email, maybe like a month after I launched this software. Backlinks Indexer is the name of it. And it's actually still running. But so he hits me up on email and he's like, hey, I've been using this. This works really great. I want to promote it to my list. What's your affiliate page? And I'm like, I'm Googling how to set up an affiliate program.
What is an affiliate page?
Yeah, exactly. Affiliate program. What is this? So I literally am just doing this all, burning the midnight oil, setting up an affiliate program because I know that, money loves speed, and I do not want to delay on this before he jumps ship or something. I don't know where his mind's at. So I'm just working all night. I end up finding an affiliate program, and I set it up. I test it. I send him the affiliate link or the link for him to sign up. And I'm just like, hey, here it is. Really appreciate you even emailing me. I've been a fan. I've used the best spinner for the last 6 months that I've been even trying to make money online. So I really appreciate it. And he sends out an email, and I kid you not, like he brought in so much heat. I went from making like a few $100, maybe $1,000 a month to like almost 18,000 a month in recurring rebills, like overnight. And I was just like, holy crap. I was like, this is insane. Like I just started this and I'm still technically in the Army, like getting out processed. And at that point, it's almost like I got like nervous. I got like the nervous shakes that this was like really happening. I can kind of still like feel the emotion of that whole time.
Dan, can I interrupt you here for a second?
Yeah, of course.
I want to kind of highlight something here. First, I want to ask, what was the name of that software that you made?
It's called backlinksindexer.com. Still.
Oh, okay. I remember using that. I want to
still ranks
something. What's that? It still ranks.
It still ranks for all these terms, like how to index backlinks, and because I caught the trend before it became a trend.
That's funny, and you have the domain name. I want to point out something that you mentioned. I want to highlight it. That is sort of another variation of kind of strike while the iron's hot. I think a lot of people think, oh, he got lucky, but I think a lot of people have opportunities like that come along, and they don't take advantage of it. And you got to be able to hit those. And I think you identified it correctly. Maybe if you'd waited, maybe if you said, oh, sorry, I don't have an affiliate program, but I'll set one up next month or something. Maybe it just never would have come. And who knows where your journey would have gone from there. So
yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Dan.
Market research, like you have to have your finger to the pulse to your market to really know what they want.
The thing that jumped out at me, because I've experienced this, and that's kind of, the nature of what sounds, I was like, oh, that's obviously true, is that when you went from like that 1,000 a month up to 18, and it was not an entirely positive emotional experience being there.
No.
Right. You kind of, it's like,
I got scared.
Yeah. It's like just flat out like frightened. Like people don't, that's not something that anyone's really mentally prepared for, especially if you've been in like a job or a place where you have a steady income and that number jumps huge. What do you remember specifically? You say you can remember the feeling, which sometimes is easier to remember than the details, but were there certain things you were considering that were like triggering that fear or that anxiety or whatever it was? Like, yeah, what about it brought that? Do you know? Can you identify that?
It's kind of hard to put it into words. I feel like it was almost, I got there and now I'm really scared that it could be gone. Like how do
the pressure to stay?
Yeah, the pressure to stay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. We'll probably circle back around on that. I would imagine a couple different times, because that's something I think that plagues a lot of people that work online. I still experience it sometimes. Like, oh my God, I gotta keep this number going now, right? And looking at my income, it's just not true. There's big swings up and down, and they don't necessarily mean, when things go up, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got it all figured out. And when things go down, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going wrong. It's just some trend and some luck and stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's just
David,
the mentality of the entrepreneur. I think if you're not growing, you feel like you're falling behind or something.
Yeah. So after that kind of initial affiliate, push with Jonathan Ledger, your revenue went up considerably.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you were able to probably, test your capacity a lot differently. What did that kind of lead to? Did you wind up then identifying like these affiliate type promotions as something that you were going to even seek out, or you just kind of ride that for a while?
I did. We did actually reach out to a few other affiliates. I think a couple had messaged us just from seeing the sales thread on the forum starting to gain even more popularity at this point. And I want to say Colin, I think, was one of our early affiliates too. He had Social Monkey at the time. And I just remember his name, Colin Klinkert, and I would just see it pop up all the time. And when I finally met him at OMG, like 2013, whatever it was, I was like, oh, you're Colin Klinkert. I was like, okay, nice to put a face to the name. You've been throwing us some numbers for quite some time.
You earned that suit that you're wearing.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, though, Fletch, was that I took the success of that, even though it was continuing to grow, I took a lot of that money that I was making, the profits, the revenue, and I started reinvesting it in other ideas that I had that I wasn't able to bankroll before, but now I could. So I bootstrapped other ideas that I thought would be good ones, and a lot of them paid off. Some didn't, but if you do the right market research and you see the questions are being asked and you see the voids that need to be filled, and you develop a product around that, I feel like it's pretty hard to fail as long as you generate enough interest and start getting those reviews in. So that's what we did. Just kind of reinvested in new ideas that I always wanted to do, and just kept it all bootstrapped.
Now, one of the things that just a single word that's come up a few times that I've noticed that I think a lot of people slight a lot, the nature of doing research, right? If you go to business school or buy a business book, it's going to talk about a business plan, and then you got your market research component of that. And nobody knows what that means, and they hire somebody to go out and ask questionnaires to figure out if you even have a viable product or business. Online, with what we can do with forums and keyword research and that type of thing, is a very different situation. But I think even with that and with the tools that we have as entrepreneurs nowadays, a lot of people are kind of still sliding the research they do before going into a new project. Could you talk maybe more about your experience with that research, things that have worked and haven't worked, and what are you, is it just a situation where doing what you do online, you start noticing things and then that makes you put more of your attention on that and actually flesh it out more fully? Or do you have an idea and then you go specifically look for research to back it up?
Yeah, it's a combination of a few things. But you're exactly right. Like I see so many people who develop products first and ask questions later, and they're just trying to like kind of shove a solution to a problem that no one really even had in the first place. So it doesn't really work that way. So it's usually partially a problem for me first. That's usually how I start with something. It's like, okay, I have this problem. Is there a good solution that exists already? Yes or no? And if yes, and is there anything to improve upon it? If not, then I'm good. Then I just won't bother with it. But if there's room for improvement and I think I can build upon it, I may take it to another level and just start seeing if other people have similar problems as well, and if there's any way to automate it. If it can't really be automated and systemized, I don't really have any interest in it because it's bad just business to trade time for money. So if I can't really scale it and remove myself from it, at least to a certain degree, I probably won't even start it. But the market research aspect of it, like I said, almost always boils down to a problem I have first.
That's awesome. David, you're kind of the automation and systems guy of the two of us. But that's a huge component. And I think a lot of ideas and vision that people have of what it's like to work online is that all these systems are already handled. Dan actually is somebody who builds these. David has a ton of automation tools and scripts and things as well. because I think that's such a big component of the vision that so many people have. It lends itself well to services and tools and things like that that actually achieve that for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe David, Dan, each of you maybe sound off a little bit on was that just like a natural like proclivity or like a tendency or something that you guys wanted? Like Dan, you said this like kind of something I wanted, so it started with me. But I think it's universal as well. I think many people that are drawn online because of that, because it's like, oh, push button millions kind of, vision. There's a lot of stuff that has to go on in the background if that were ever going to be the case, which I still, unless you guys can build that software, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, not quite. David, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think I was drawn to it a long time ago. I am a big efficiency. I like things being efficient, and I find the idea of building something that provides an ongoing value, basically spending I'm using one time kind of loosely to provide an ongoing value. I find that to be very useful. When you look at a lot of what's happened in society and business and the development over time, a lot of it is developing systems. And so having a systems focus and understanding like what can be automated and what can't be, although kind of think of like, when you think of software, what's possible? Anything is possible pretty much. If you theoretically and kind of practically in a way as well. And so, I've always loved kind of like the systems thinking. It requires kind of like a holistic thought process, because I think a lot of people try to make a dollar or save a dollar over here, but they don't realize it's costing them $10 over here. Sort of like what Dan said, like tying his money to his time and like trying to do like an hourly type of job. That's just not, I'm not going to pretend like I've done as much as Dan has done with regards to software, but at the same time, it is something that I have focused on a lot, which is systems. Trying to automate things that can be automated for myself and potentially for other people as well. That's something that I've built like little pieces of software, never had like kind of a SaaS software like what Dan has done. Lots of little plugins, some of my own software as well, but nothing quite as all encompassing as him. So I am familiar with, I think also Dan having a little bit of background in computer science and understanding sort of like kind of the thought process for that. I think once you've programmed in a few different languages, it makes it I wouldn't consider myself a programmer, but I find it to be very useful when talking to a developer to understanding how to communicate with them. So no, I mean, I could talk about systems and like automating things and making them more streamlined. So like with my business, since it does require, at least the way I've set it up, it does require me. I try to systemize it as much as possible so that it's extremely streamlined, and then ultimately, utilize that to make the money that I need to make.
So something you said right there, David, and I could be completely wrong on this, Dan, but it sounds like it's true for you as well. I've developed software. I say I developed it, meaning I was like the lead consultant, and our responsibility was developing software, right? And so I was able to hire out. This is long ago, long before I was online. But one of the things that I had a misconception about is, well, no, you can't build software. You don't know how to write a single line of code. You don't know languages, the syntax and all that. Like, you're never going to learn that and then deploy something and be able to support it in time. So I was like, well, I doubt that everybody involved with the software business is writing code. So, that was kind of my first foray into getting some software built, like back in 96, 97. Like when we're talking, about software and automation tools, I think that component of being able to identify a need, like this is something that needs to happen, lets you be kind of the I don't say the lead developer, but like the person in charge of like needs assessments and things like that. And, what I want to kind of get to is a place where, people who are listening to this, who have never done anything with software, never done anything online, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to know everything about developing software to start doing it. I would agree with what David said about, having some background in computer science, being able to talk to developers appropriately. would be a huge like leg up. But, at the same time, as long as you're kind of, I won't say cautious. Well, cautious is maybe the right word, right? You can be excited and cautious at the same time. There's a lot of good people out there that are just looking for work, looking for people who know how to identify those problems and those gaps, and they can do great work for you. So is that kind of a model that you've continued to use, Dan, as far as, do you always use the same developers? Do you go to different sources for new, new types of solutions that you're offering, or do you have that now in-house, or how you set up?
I have various teams, and it really just varies based on the complexity of the project. So, I have essentially categorized them in my A team, my B team, and my C team. And if it's, it's a very in-depth, very like advanced project like Smart Engage, I need my A team on it, right? That's no questions asked. If it's a smaller type of project, maybe it's just like a simple plugin or just some small automation stuff, I could bring in my B or my C team. And I've worked with these guys for years now, so I know where they fall. But when I first started in the marketplace, it was still fairly young for outsourcing this kind of talent. Now you can go to so many different places and resources, and you can look at all of the reviews, you can read all the comments, you can really do your due diligence and make sure you don't get, kind of screwed over. But I mean, David's 100% right. Having a computer science background helps, but I know so many people who don't know anything about coding who are very successful with SaaS. And the reason is they do their research, and they have a general idea of technical writing. I think technical writing is super important, because what having a computer science background allows you to do is think the way, or at least kind of understand the way a computer programmer may think. And when you write out your specifications, your documentation as to what you want to build, whatever that software may be, then you approach it from a different level. So you're taking yourself out of it emotionally, and you're thinking of it in a logic-based application. And it's easy for me to say since I have a computer science background, but if anyone who goes on wants to put the work in on YouTube and just kind of research technical writing and this sort of thing, they can really communicate ideas in a way that are well structured for a developer to execute on, versus just not having any understanding of, well, why can't you do this? It seems so simple. Nothing is simple in the world of coding, especially if it's already been developed, down the line. If you have something that's been built for 3 months and you think that something can be simply changed, chances are it probably can't. But, that's just the mindset of someone who doesn't necessarily understand what goes into it. But so bottom line is, having a computer science background helps, but definitely not necessary.
I totally agree. I think what will end up happening, to me, some of the scenarios where it's made the most help for me was when a developer gave me back sort of like a response in terms of, this is what we're going to do, and me giving some pushback on that in terms of like, and typically it means that there was like a lack of communication, maybe on my end. And so I was able to understand a little bit of like, wait, it's going to take you 50 hours of work to do this thing that I think should be, 1 hour or 5 minutes or something. And so being able to understand some of that, ultimately, I think you could either, you just take a little bit extra cost because maybe there's going to be some inefficiencies, or you could hire, and I'm curious what you think about this. Dan, do you have like a software project manager or managers?
Yeah. So each team essentially has a team leader, and that team leader is usually the person I communicate with directly. So I don't usually talk to,
like that, who has programming experience, isn't going to do the programming, but it can communicate, can kind of translate what you want into kind of technical speak a little bit better, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's kind of your intermediary, and exactly that. He can translate anything that you don't really grasp and communicate your goals and objectives to the team.
So I'm curious. Let's say, and this is sort of like a big question, and I know there's a lot of ways to go with it. Let's say you kind of had to start over. Not that you had like no resources, but let's say you had no software, and your money was pretty, not like nothing, but pretty tight. And so how would you go about? I guess you'd have to build a new software development team, and you do your research. How would you go about kind of starting over with your software business?
If I had to start over, just speaking to the software side of things, you can still find, like every once in a while, I will check Upwork or Freelancer and just look at upcoming talent, people who don't necessarily have a lot of reviews, but I will interview them thoroughly enough and ask them the right questions and see where they're at with their knowledge. And sometimes you can get like some really good developers for cheap because they just don't have a name for themselves yet. So you can take advantage of that talent and kind of grow up with them. And, you should do right by your developers as well. If you're going to take them along with you, you can pay them accordingly for the project. If it's a SaaS, obviously you need to pay for support monthly. So I think that's one of the ways where you can capitalize that if you're at a very low budget starting point, finding some kind of undiscovered talent versus going right to the guys who have 500 reviews. They got a full development team already. And yes, you're still saving money compared to what you would pay, probably in the States or anywhere else where you may live. You're still finding talent in places like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, some Slavic type countries. One of my best developers is actually from Vietnam. Like this guy I feel like I really found a genius that was just undiscovered, and I got very fortunate with that. So that level of talent is out there for people who are willing to just put the time and work in. I talk about all this like systems and automation, so you can remove yourself from stuff, but the only way you get to there is by putting a lot of time into getting to that point. You put so many hours in just to get to that level.
And do you treat these, when you find a good person, how do you treat them?
I treat them the same way I would treat myself. I don't ever want to talk down to people. I don't like to be condescending in any way. I'm always very friendly. And I see the way people sometimes talk to their employees, especially when they, it's almost like a faceless relationship online. It's almost like commanding them, do this, do that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just not the way I operate, but I always, hey, how's it going? Just some simple being cordial with someone, right?
No, I think that goes a long way. I think one of the ways I've been able to be efficient for my business, for my client stuff, is that I have some long-term contracters that I treat well. I mean, if somebody does a good job, not everybody's going to be able to do a good job. And I think that your efficiency, imagine if you had to switch out your software development teams like constantly, you're constantly churning those people. Treating people with respect, treating them with understanding and not being a jerk while still expecting them to get work done, I think goes a really long way towards building a business to where you don't have to constantly be working in your business.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people generally just want to be appreciated for the work they're doing. So appreciate them for the work they're doing. It's not hard.
Right. I totally agree. Say thank you. Say, I appreciate that. Say good job.
I will tell my developers all the time, amazing job with this new feature. It came out better than I thought. I just said that to my developer yesterday for something he's adding for Smart Engage. And, 300 smiley faces later, he's doing the next feature.
Right. Talk about saving money. Not only do you not have to fire and hire people, which is inefficient, but people like to be appreciated. They'll probably work for less and be less likely to ask for more money if you're just actually nice to them. And it's just kind of full of all sorts of win.
I always want them to feel more like they're part of the team versus just a contractor, right? I don't want them to just think I'm just collecting a paycheck, because the work will be reflected in that.
Yeah. And I try to treat them, my thought process on that, my simple hack is to treat them like customers. Because in a way they are customers.
Yeah.
And so if they're, if they're doing a good job and they're a good customer, then I'm going to treat them with as much respect as I can muster. I'm also curious. So I've never made a SaaS product. That's what I hear a lot of people trying to do. Would you start, let's say, again, we're going back to kind of the scenario. Would you start with a SaaS product, or would you try to build something a little smaller?
At this point in where we are with everything, I think I would probably make a free Chrome extension. I think that's where the lowest hanging fruit would be. I would make a free Chrome extension, and I would lose money up front, but I'd build my list into a paid version of probably the same extension. So maybe a light version, which was free, build up the list, and then bring that list onto the paid version. Of course, this is all, based on needing a good product, a good hook, right? No one's just going to download a Chrome extension. It doesn't do anything. So you would need to do the market research and see what makes sense for that. But I think that's a very good market to be in right now for someone just starting out versus trying to create a whole SaaS product from scratch. Like, it's very difficult, and you're going to need a good team to do that. It's definitely very expensive.
So let's talk about
Do
the
a good one.
extension. I'm curious. I'm trying to demystify someone who says, "Oh, okay, I think I see a solution here, but I don't have a big budget, and I'd like to kind of build things." What you laid out there, I think, is pure gold. So they've done their market research. They think they have an opportunity. Roughly, how much how much money? Again, I'm not like an exact number. Nobody's going to hold you an exact number. And how long would you take to get kind of like a minimum viable product up with a free Chrome extension?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's budgets could be a little bit different. I would think that you could get something pretty good for 2,000 to 5,000 range.
Okay.
And it would be exactly what you want it to be. And again, that's, it's an investment, but these things really do pay off. Another, alternative to that is to look at someone who already has an extension out there that just kind of let it die. And there's a lot of those. So you can look in the Chrome store and just see people's extensions that haven't been updated in a long time. And sometimes they'll come with built-in lists. I've bought at least 5 different Chrome extensions that had built-in email lists. And all I did was essentially buy, I really just kind of got the list, and then I just started marketing to them based on the Chrome extension and said, hey, we're not really supporting this anymore, but here's something else that, kind of does something similar that I think you'd like and actually does a little bit more. Right. So those are pretty golden opportunities. I don't know if I should be dropping these nuggets because that's actually a really good one.
No, I think that's great. I think this is translating into a potential hook. What do you think so far, Fletch? I'm going to ask a bunch more questions, but I don't want to dominate this.
Yeah, no, roll with this. This is a great thread. I've got a couple things I'll circle back to, but yeah.
I want to kind of close this loop because I'm trying to build like a whole thing. I'm actually trying to think about this from my own business because I feel like I'm kind of streamlined to do some of this stuff already. So how long would you expect an MVP to take to build roughly? And would it be one programmer?
Yeah, you could probably get away with one programmer and it'd probably be 2 to 3 months. And I will say this though, make sure that your expectations are clearly laid out from the start, because you're probably familiar with this term, creep, which as creep. A product, yes. So as the product develops and goes along, so you're a month in on what's supposed to be a 2-month product, and all of a sudden the idea, you get the good idea fairy hits you in the head one night when you're sleeping. So next day you're typing to the developer, hey, I really want to do this, this, and this. And and that happens again in a few more weeks. And, and eventually what was supposed to be a 2-month project is now 6 months, right? So, and I've made that mistake. I've been there and I've done it, and it is bad. And the only time you should actually revise the original plan is if it is critical. If and that is a very rare scenario, because really you just need to think it through the first time, let it go to fruition and market it, and then add to it down the line. The first thing is get it out there.
Yeah, like I just keep it like an ideas document on these are some additional features that I want to do down the line, and just jump it in there and then forget about it until.
Yep, that's the way to do it.
So I'm curious also about buying these old extensions, how much of a shortcut that is. I mean, it sounds like you're not only just getting the extension. Are you buying it just for the email list, or do you sometimes take the extension and modify it?
Sometimes take the extension and modify it, actually. Yeah, it just depends on what it is. If it's just in the same like niche that I care about and I don't really like the extension, it's more about the list at that point. But if it's actually a decent kind of plugin that's just not really supported anymore, I'll probably, extend. When I say plugin and extension, same thing really. I will, try to improve it.
So let me ask you this. So how would you, I want to get into how you would start off like marketing it as well. And you answered part of that, which is just start with an email list. Maybe that's enough to kind of get you rolling. But let's say
that definitely gets the ball rolling. Reviews are very important for extensions. So if you can incentivize reviews somehow, I mean, again, this stipulates that you have a decent product, because obviously you can't really say you have to give me a 5-star review. You just have to say, please give me honest feedback or an honest review. So reviews mean a lot in the Chrome store. Obviously you have the email list, which you can market to. If you're trying to build it out in terms of an organic type of situation and ranking in the Chrome store, it really boils down to traffic to it and downloads and the reviews. But you can run any kind of PPC campaign to it. Facebook ads for Chrome extensions work very well. Hey, download, here's the Chrome extension. You call people out. Hey, so-and-so, you still looking for this? You already did your targeting analysis. I'm not going to get into that, but essentially you call out your target audience and you say, here is a free Chrome extension that solves X, Y, and Z.
I love it. No,
There it
that's
is.
great. I feel like you've given almost like a whole starting model for someone to, if, hey, they want to get into the software business, how they could, okay, they see an opportunity, and that's critical. You got to do your research. You got to like kind of.
Hmm.
I think it's useful what you said, and this is what I've done with my software. Is it's always software that I build for myself. I'm a customer in a way, and so it
Hmm.
really helps me understand what's good and what's not good, and helps me understand where the needs are. And then just kind of search around. And I think, let me ask you this: if someone, would you still enter a software market even if there were several other people doing the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Only if it's not marketed properly.
Okay.
And I've bought businesses on Flippa that were the best that you could buy. Like, they are doing the best job possible for that solution, but the marketing was terrible. And that's an opportunity that you could pounce on if you have marketing knowledge.
That's great.
For example, I'll give you an example. 2013, I saw a site on Flippa for The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. It was a fan site that does like a bachelor bracket where you basically like do March Madness for the show.
That's hilarious.
It was the number one, still is. It's the number one fan site for The Bachelor and Bachelorette, right? But the guy had zero marketing, didn't know anything about anything. He had like a 50,000 email list, which he didn't even mail once. He knew nothing about marketing. I saw it and I just thought, wow, this is a diamond in the rough. So I bought it, and my wife wanted to run it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to buy this and we're going to market it and we're going to kill it. So we bought it, had like 50,000 emails. I started running Facebook ads to people who like The Bachelor. It's super hyper targeted. It's so easy to market when you're not doing it to other marketers. I love it. Because we're the most jaded people on the planet, right? When we see something for sale, we're just like, well, what is this guy trying to scam, But just people who are looking at a nice graphic of all the contestants for this season who happen to like the show, they're clicking that ad and they're signing up to play that game. So we went from like 50,000 emails to now we're almost at 300,000 emails for the site. Traffic is ridiculous, so that's just one example of just seeing a way that something existed. It was already being solved. I could have built my own site really and probably still competed, but I just kind of wanted to have a starting point. So I bought what he had and applied general marketing to it. And, it really took off.
Wow, this is gold. I didn't expect it to go here, but I'm actually really happy. I think I've closed that loop. I was trying to kind of get the whole business model idea there for our listeners, and for myself, being my own self. Fletch, do you have anything that jumped out at you there?
Well, yeah, I keep jotting notes. I love that. I get like a free education every time we do one of these. It's amazing. But like one of the kind of themes that's come up a few times is just like being able to communicate and have a relationship with the people that you work with, right? Whether they're outsourced or developer, in-house. Those components aren't the first thing that jump to mind when somebody thinks about working online, right? And like in one way, what you're doing with Smart Engage is automating portions of opening up that and building that relationship with a potential client. I think because many people are, I don't say averse to, but they're either focused on running their business in one way or another. They're not as client focused as they could be. I won't say should be, but like there's only so much time in the day, right? So was there something specifically about Smart Engage that made you want to focus kind of on that? I assume it's mostly used on the front end or initially after a purchase for communications, or it's ongoing as well with email, I know, and continued promotions. But like, what about kind of the relationship and communication portion of running a business? Smart Engage was what kind of drew you there, or like what in your life was like, oh my God, I got all these things.
Yeah.
Was it,
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really want to create the software because it was a huge undertaking. Unlike anything I've ever done, huge investment and just trying to go up against the Goliaths of the industry, email service providers, right? You got guys who've been here forever. I built it out of what I felt was necessity because, here I had all these email lists, and then I started building like messenger lists. So I had all these messenger lists on other software, and then I had a big web push notification list. I had some SMS lists. So it was like everything, I had good lists everywhere, but there was no synergy between them. So if I want to send out like a broadcast or just kind of identify what's getting me the most results, I couldn't do that in a way that I could understand. So if I sent out a broadcast on email and I sent out a broadcast on Messenger, the same guy could get the same message and be like, dude, why I already got it on email, I already got it here, stop spamming me. So I wanted to be able to do that in a way that was a little more streamlined. So I was just like, well, let me see if there's something that kind of connects all these dots. And I didn't find anything. So I started this journey, and I was just, I had to really just think, like, do I really want to make this investment? And I got to a point where I realized that there's a good opportunity here, not just for myself, but for other people who are having similar issues. Because I did see a lot of people having similar issues, like, oh, I wish so-and-so would allow me to do email, or allow me to do Messenger, or allow me to do text messages. So it was, again, like we talked about earlier, Fletch, a problem I had that I had to kind of try to solve for myself. And since then, it's evolved a little bit, and now it's come a long way from where I had envisioned it to be, and we're starting to grow. We're getting some pretty big names using the software now. I'm not going to really name drop anyone, but I'm very happy with where we are. And now the biggest thing is trying to streamline our features that we want to continue to grow with. And that's what a SaaS is all about, is taking a portion of your profit, your revenue, and reinvesting it into your R&D and staying current with what people want, and not always what they want, what they don't even know they want. Sometimes you kind of have to, I don't say you can't be like Nostradamus here, but you have to understand where the market's going. And that's one of those advanced things I think just comes with time and research.
You know your product and you know what's possible, and a lot of your customers might not even know what's possible. And so no one should know your product better than you do. So, and especially if you're using it on a day-to-day basis, you should be like, for me, a lot of times it's like I'm using a software and I'm like, and that I own, I'm just like, oh, I want to be able to do this. Okay, just add it to my list of things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's one of the things we're actually working on now too, is the onboarding process, because in the past, most of my software has been very, very simple, very, solves one problem, and it's not too hard to, one tutorial video and you're good. This, there's a little bit more to it. I wouldn't say it's complicated, but there's a learning curve, like most, major enterprise softwares out there. So part of what we're working on now is building out a really good onboarding process where we bring people into, one-on-one, essentially conference call where we help them get their list imported and just give them a quick overview.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about this from my perspective, and I've switched email providers several times the last several months, and it is not a small thing. So thinking about doing that is just sort of like, oh, that's actually the biggest hurdle for me. What would you tell to someone who's considering, like, how would you go about, first of all, what would you tell to somebody, and how would you go about figuring out what to tell somebody to kind of get them over that hurdle?
In terms of not being afraid to change, you're saying?
Yeah, to move your list and all your
list
and all the stuff that goes around that, all the opt-ins and all that.
Yeah. Right. I would tell someone that, if they're happy where they are, they could probably stay where they are. But most of the people I deal with are either starting from scratch, or they have big lists that just aren't getting it done with these other providers. Whatever the open rates dropped, maybe they're landing in the spam folder. So throughout the course of all of this, I've really dug deep in the email inbox, because the rest of the stuff is fairly easy. The email stuff, like I said earlier, is where I hired a professional team. But in so doing, I've also learned so much, and I've actually figured out ways to improve the domain reputation for these senders in some creative ways. So I'll reach out to these people on a one-on-one basis and let them know that importing their list is not hard. It's making sure that they hit the inbox after that we want to focus on. And there are ways to do that they can do with SPF and DKIM and DMARC settings, and just making sure that their domain reputation is being tracked, making sure that they're sending the right types of emails, they're being engaging with their emails. So there's a lot of small things that are all part of the email algorithm. That's a whole other topic for a discussion we can probably do another time. Sure. But yeah,
I just let them. Team is prepared to help somebody set that up to improve their domain reputation and the amount of stuff that gets in the inbox.
Right? Yes, if they have over a certain number of emails, we are doing that.
Sweet, that's great. I see the value when I see this. To me, the Facebook Messenger that's huge. To be able to integrate just those two things together, I think could go a really long way. So I'm actually excited to give it a try and see, kind of poke around in there and see what I think.
Nice. Yeah, I still view email as the core of communication, but there's nothing better right now than Messenger to get leads into your funnel. So that's kind of like, I always tell people that's really the best way to kind of start them in the journey. So you get them in Messenger from the opt-in, you segment them through just some basic questions, and you can tag them and add custom fields based on their responses. And now you bring them into email, and then you kind of can sprinkle in some re-engagement with Messenger from time to time, as well as push notifications and text messages. But in my opinion, Facebook Messenger is the best way to start it, and then bring them into your email list.
I like that. Great.
Yeah. So another thing that jumped out as you said it is how jaded, certain people in the digital marketing industry can be and become, and it almost feels so normal to be trying to market to people who are marketers, right? This is like kind of a psychological thing that I consider a lot, is that like once you get to a place where you know certain things, you start believing that everybody else knows them as well, right? It doesn't seem as novel. It doesn't seem like it's as much of a challenge. That element to me, especially when you're marketing to other marketers, is that something that you directly address, that you directly like feel or consider, like when you're doing a B2B with other marketing teams versus like what you talked about with like the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, right? There's different kind of levels of needing to, position things in like a certain way. What are there any things that really clearly differentiate marketing to other like marketer types versus general public?
I feel like it's just a longer process to essentially market to the marketers, because a lot of cynics are involved in that, and you have to kind of take them more on a journey with, whether it's a webinar or some videos and that sort of thing. You can't just take them from start to finish in a short amount of time like you could do in other markets. Usually it's need, solution, buy. In marketing, it's need, you show me a solution, I don't believe you. Show me, take them on, on a webinar or some testimonials that you start to wear at them, and they think, well, maybe this could make my life easier as a marketer. All right, I'll give it a shot. So.
And then they want the free trial, and then you've got to get them to actually.
Yep. You got to have the free trial.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. That actually probably helps a lot of people in differentiating those two, because, yeah, it's just a very large component of what we consider when we're trying to figure out what to do to get our offer really being used, right, by the people we sell to. So.
And even with marketers, you have various levels of stages of where they're at in their knowledge, right? Like you said, Fletch, that you have some people that, sometimes you take for granted that people have an understanding of what you have, but a lot of people don't. There are entry-level marketers who maybe just don't have half the knowledge you do as a marketer, and they still need something you have to offer, right?
Yeah, so. that was actually kind of the point. I may have said that backwards. I tend to do that. I won't turn around backwards, but I actually say things the opposite way. Is that like I sometimes have a belief that people know what I know, even other marketers, right? And then I'll just in passing say something that is like a really nice, tidy framework or something like that, and they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, well, this. Like when I'm talking to other SEOs, right? I've taught SEO for a long time, and I'm talking to other SEOs, and we talk about concepts, and people just tend to say things in passing like, oh yeah, and I'm like, I don't know that. That's why I'm like writing things down all the time. Like people who are just getting into this, I think probably take for granted that everybody else knows what they've got, right? And and if they went to college in computer science, everybody comes out with a degree, which means everybody knows the same thing, which is not the case at all, right? I think that's one of the kind of things hidden in like certifications and degrees and things like that. Do you have any, like, what we've been talking about is a completely different like paradigm for coming up with a viable product, right? If you're doing SaaS, or you're going to offer your own service or whatever it might be, build your own product. It's a thing you want. It's a thing you need. That kind of takes you completely out of this. Oh, what should I help people with? It has to be something that I know that they don't know, and then trying to figure out that gap. That's nearly impossible. I don't know. I think I was just talking to myself right now, just to remind myself of how
I liked it.
How big of a I do this a lot. I just usually don't have a microphone on.
Hands into listening to Flex.
Yeah. No, but the like with Smart Engage, this is a project that's taken a couple years.
Yeah, two and a half years or so. I mean, we had some, early on testers and stuff for a while, but yeah.
Right. And so then, like, taking this forward, are like the thing you said, you sometimes have to offer things to people that they don't yet know they want, right? Or they don't yet know they need.
Mm-hmm.
And what that process looks like, it reminds me of kind of like the Henry Ford quote about.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. And so, yes, you rely on feedback. Yes, you look at forums to do the research to see what people are talking about and asking questions about, but that's kind of almost like a foot in the door. And then from there, being able to have a vision of where things could go or where things could be. Do you have any, tips, tricks, processes for sprinkling in or moving things in a direction that you see that your customers may not see yet?
I think that just really goes back to having your finger on the pulse, just a saying that we've used in the Army, which is just knowing, in reference then, it was just knowing where your soldiers are, mentally at, whether they have problems at home or whatever. So same thing for the market. You have to really know your business, know your customers, and then along with that, be involved in, now it's Facebook, right? Back then it was forums. So you need to be, looking on Facebook, looking on YouTube, reading comments, just kind of having an understanding of what the market is currently doing. And like you said, it's not always going to be what they're asking for directly. But yeah, it's almost abstract. I can't really put this into like a formulaic way of executing on it. It's just a feeling of making an educated guess as to what is coming down the line. Sometimes you could be wrong, but if you do these steps, your probability of success goes up a lot more.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot in doing this myself. I know, if I'm doing research in a market or a vertical that I'm looking to get into, there's the stuff that people say, and then there's the reading between the lines. Like, if they're asking this, that means this other thing has to be true, right? So if they're asking about how to get more leads, okay, one of the things that must be true about that is that, A, they think there's more leads out there. B, there's a whole bunch of things that are like the implications that led to that question. And for me personally, there's been a lot of that type of thing that comes from just putting the time in. Like, I think a lot of people want to just be able to be like, oh, if I type this, then they'll just give me the instructions of what to do now, right? And there really aren't instructions. They're, you hit this and you get some information, and then you continue to kind of keep that open, and then continue to build understanding and notice things, and notice, don't say trends, but patterns, and recognize some of those things.
Absolutely. I think that goes into just kind of stacking the deck in your favor as much as you can, and just kind of increasing that probability. And to outsiders, it looks like, oh, he's a lucky guy. But really what you've done is you've just set the stage with it being in your favor by putting in all of the work, behind the scenes.
Doing your homework. Surprise.
Exactly.
Doing your homework helps a lot. I'm also curious, before we get too far on, I think we kind of like we're going through your story, and then I think we went I'm not sure if we went off or if there's more to after the $18,000 per month kind of overnight switch. Are there some other really big wins or points, or even some low points in your story that you want to talk about? Those are actually really great, where you win and then you fall down a little bit and then you win again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, really that was like before I started making that software Backlinks Index. So that's really where I hit the low in my life. I was going through divorce, pretty much loss of identity, didn't know who I was, what I was going to do. Essentially I was, an Army officer. That's how I identified myself. I was proud of it. So I was struggling with that, struggling with what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. What do I want to be when I grow up? So all of those things. And then, I did finally, kind of hit a switch and, made a conscious effort to like ranger up as, the way I just see it in my head, to not take a step backwards. I just always remember telling myself that I'm not going to take a step back. I'm just going to figure this thing out and put in ridiculous amounts of time to do that. And, I kind of stayed in the background. So I was developing these softwares, and I kind of, like I was saying, bootstrapped into other ones, and they were being successful. And it wasn't until I just went to like a random marketing event. Well, it wasn't random. It was JV Zoo at the time. I think it was 2014, 13. And no one really knew who I was. And I wasn't like trying to act like I was a big deal or anything. They're just like, oh, Dan Anton. Hi, nice to meet you. They're like, oh, what did you do? I was like, oh, I developed some software. I told them a few of them. I was like, did backlinks index. I was like, whoa, you did that? I've been using that for years. Oh yeah, I know that. And it's like a lot of people knew it. And I was just like, oh wow, I've just been in the shadows for so long. No one's ever put a face to the name. And they're just like, oh man, you need to put yourself out there. You have to, you have to market yourself too. And I was like, I don't know. I just enjoy kind of.
Sorry, this is funny to me.
Yeah, I just enjoy it kind of.
You're like, you've done this awesome stuff that very few people have done. And you're just like, yeah, I mean, I guess I've done some cool stuff. And people are like, what? And you're like, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I didn't expect them to actually know it though. Like, I knew it was successful, but I was still, it still was nice that, people knew what it was and were happy about it. And I actually ran into some other people who, like the next day, the marketing event was like a 3-day event. But the next day I ran into some people who promoted actually. And I was like, oh yeah, I know you. He's like, yeah, man, you sent me a lot of money. I was like, thanks. You sent me a lot of business. Like it's just funny to run into these people. And, I started talking to a couple people in particular, and they just said, for your next product or if you come out with something else, you should really, work the affiliate angle, because you could do a lot of, you could do a lot of numbers with that. You could reach a lot more people, at least off the bat. And that was interesting to me because in my mind before that, it was always, I'm just going to rank organically in SEO, by ranking in Google, because that's how you get traffic. And I still think that's the best, obviously, because it's just, just pays for itself over and over and over again.
Right.
And with the, a few affiliates sprinkled in. So this was like a new space for me, but that event led me to doing a launch, which was crowd search. And I brought that into the JVZoo space, and it just crushed it. I had all kinds of people jumping on board to promote it. And that was really, eye-opening for me when that took off. So that was kind of like my first time that I put my face on a product, actually. And then after that, I started like backwards putting myself on my product. So I was like, okay, well, this is also me, and this is also me.
Yeah, I think what you talked about there, I think is big, because for people who are just kind of starting out of looking at digital marketing, a lot of what they'll run into potentially are like guru types, right? Where it's all about the face and the lifestyle and this, that, and the other, versus like, here's a solution to a problem you've got, right? So, right now, I have a feeling there's a lot more people that are interacting with a person first and then kind of a solution or a problem or something. And it sounds like your experience is almost the opposite of like, this is really, product driven, like solution driven. And then only after the fact that you realize that connection with people can be a great thing, a great tool.
Yeah.
Did you actually apply it? One of the other things you said there, it's personal for me as well, is just that identity shift, right? When you talked about getting out of the service, I don't know what you experienced, but I know what that feels like when I stopped being an athlete, right? And it's like, holy shit, like that was my whole life, right? It's like, now what? Like in one way or another, everybody goes through that at various times, right? But like, you took something that you had within like the service, like you mentioned Ranger Up, right? Something that you'd learned, some kind of core thing that you knew could get you through to get to that next place. Are there any other like portions of that period of your life that you could either talk about like a little more in depth, or like tools or just attitudes of I'm not going to think about that right now, or I'm really going to think about that right now, that you could share?
I think I was just fortunate enough to grow up in a household where, we were just always encouraged to do our absolute best in everything that we do. So I was almost embarrassed to do anything less. I did feel, like I said, I was, I had a little bit of depression at the time, understandably so. And I made it as, minimal as possible, just because I got to a certain point where I just realized, I'm either going to fall down this hole of depression, or I'm going to just, at least fake it, fake that I'm being happy. We used to have a saying in the Army too, is false motivation is better than no motivation. So
I've never heard that. That's funny.
Yeah. So we'll just be like, yeah. And you're definitely not excited to run around in the rain, but you fake it.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, it's easy for me to say, I think, just have to have the right state of mind, but I think I just did. I don't know how exactly I flipped that switch. I'm just thankful that I did. I wish there was like a moment I could say, Fletch, where there was something I read or something that, someone told me. But for me, I think it was a combination of, I'm a little bit embarrassed of taking a step back. I've had a fairly successful career in the military. I certainly don't want my ex-wife to think that I'm falling on bad times.
Right.
Right. Not that we had a terrible falling out or anything, but it's like, you always, you don't want, I don't want anyone to see you like, not do well and think that, it's like, oh, well, you should have stayed with me or whatever, whatever it may be. Right. So it was a combination of all of those things. And I think, in the military, you do have that philosophy, those core beliefs that, you just kind of charge through, take the hill. Right. And I got to that point where I either really believed it, or I just certainly told myself I did until I got to where I needed to be.
And that's big. That's helpful, I think, for a lot of people who are, in whatever transition they're in. Just kind of the angle of this podcast and the nature of the people that I've worked with. I know there's a lot of identity that A, holds people back, and B, just completely prevents them from looking at the world differently. Right. And it kind of winds up being very limiting, especially if they're trying to get into something new. It's like, well, that behavior doesn't work. Like one of the things that with athletics, like with football, which is what I played to the furthest level, like what I did is illegal if I'm outside of those white lines for some reason, right? Like it's quite literal. That's why you have to sanction fights. That's illegal outside of the octagon or outside of the ring or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think that's applicable to a lot of different things. That's just an easy example, one I lived, which is like, there are times when you completely have to shift like your focus and not even your focus, but like where you think those boundaries and those borders are. Because if somebody who doesn't understand football steps on the field and they get, hit, it's like, wait, no, that's illegal. I'm calling the cops. Well, no, that's not how it works here. Right. And so one of the things that I kind of like to do on this podcast, and I've got another one that I'm running, is to just talk about that there are, I don't say different rules, but just like the heuristics, the way things work. The way things work online is, as an online marketer, is not what you may be used to if you're an employee. Nobody is going to give you instructions. People can help you by showing you what they did and having nice frameworks and things like that. But that component of there being like a referee and a boss and or a superior that's saying, this is the objective. This is how I'd like it to be accomplished. Those kind of all go away, right? Mm-hmm. Being an officer, you were kind of one of the people, obviously there's always superiors in a chain and things like that. But like, how much of a shift was it for you to get into this place where you're now wholly and fully responsible for the direction of things and what you're looking to move into and do?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, even as an officer, like you said, you always have a boss, right? You're always saying yes, sir, to someone. And that was actually part of it too. I thought about going into the corporate world or getting a headhunter, because as an officer, you have a lot of management skills that do apply pretty well in the business world. and I probably could have gone that route. I had some buddies of mine who had gotten out before me, and they did pretty well getting placed in different jobs in corporate America. But yeah, something about it just did not appeal to me. And I think I had said yes, sir, one too many times. And not that I have any problem with authority. I don't. I just decided I wanted to work for myself and be in control of my own destiny, whether that's success or failure. And it's a scary moment, I guess. But I think you either have that weird entrepreneur gene or not. And you'd rather just figure it out than go work for someone else. And there's nothing wrong with working for someone else. I think that's a smart move, is to have a job, save your money, and then start these ideas that you may have, research on the side. You could work. And I was working all day in the Army when I was getting out, just doing, basic office type work because I knew I was getting out, waiting for my date. And then at night I'd come home and I would just learn and study and just research. So, I think Warren Buffett said, you don't ever want to test the depth of a lake with both feet. You use one leg, right? And it's good advice, because to me, a safety net's important, right? You need to have security in knowing that you have something while you work on something else. And I know some people argue quite the opposite. You have to be in both feet and this and that. It sounds great in theory, but that's fucking scary. I don't know if I can curse on this podcast.
Burn the boats. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm on this. I mean, I have impossible time not.
So that was great. I like that answer. I'm curious also, Dan, if we could potentially project into the future to some degree. And I'm curious if you have any big plans, if you were to look forward to 2030 or maybe the next 5 to 7 years. Do you have any ideas beyond, just kind of building what you already have that you can share?
Yeah, so I've been focusing a lot on our agency, working on micro niche agencies as well, kind of formalize that into picking a niche, whoever you want to say, potato, right? And then taking that from, taking our formula, applying it, and then executing it. And then from registering the domain to making our first sale, I did it just recently in 30 days, which I thought was pretty cool. So doing that, and then with the plan to execute a exit strategy and sell it, is kind of the plan over the next few years. And then obviously Smart Engage is my baby, so I'm going to continue to grow that as much as I can. I do have some kind of plans, 5-year plan, but I don't know. I don't want to bore you guys with that. Yeah,
if you want to get personal, that's fine. As much as you want to go, but I won't push too hard.
But in my mind, I'll just say that I don't think, retirement's such a weird word. I don't think I would ever quote unquote retire. It's retire from what? I enjoy creating. I enjoy building. I still have time to travel. It's just, you build you structure your business around the life that you want to have. Certainly when you work online, you have that ability more so than any other business in the world.
And I know we haven't even talked about this at all. And I think that there's a lot of people out there fronting they've got this amazing, dope digital marketing life in order to sell things. But you're actually, how long have you lived in Puerto Rico?
I've been here about 4 years now.
And no regrets?
No, not at all. I love it.
And then we were talking about how you just went in for a month. You just went on a vacation. You do this all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking, David, about, the hurricane we had here in 2017, which was pretty bad. And not in terms, there was a lot of destruction. Our house was fine, though. All the houses here are pretty much concrete. So we did have some damage, but the main thing really was just being disconnected. It was the infrastructure was not ready for that. No one really is, because, especially on an island. So literally, my cell phone did not work after the hurricane for 2.5 weeks. Not even a cell phone signal. We're literally driving to people's houses to see if they're okay. No communication at all with the outside world. I got a hold of a satellite phone, and I was able to call my parents and let them know I was okay. I've since bought one, but at the time wasn't ready for it. I think the infrastructure has gotten a little bit better now, so even if we had something like that happen, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be completely blacked out from the rest of the world for that long of a period. But I don't want to risk it. So my wife and I decided that in the core of hurricane season, which is typically September, that we'll travel. Last year we went to Europe for actually like almost 2 months. It was like a 61-day trip. But I always think of everything as like a workcation. I always take my laptop with me. And that doesn't mean I'm sitting at the Eiffel Tower working, right? It just means that I'm going to do a little bit each day, or maybe not each day, but I'll do a little bit more on that on one day than another. It's all about how you want to structure it and how you have automated and built your systems, right? So I can work as much as I want, but you have to remember to balance everything.
And a critical point here that I think that a lot of people miss, which is they kind of conflate when you're first getting started in building versus the dream of what you have where you can kind of travel whenever you want. It's not something you start at, it's something you build to, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
It took you how many years before you really felt like you could do what you just described and live wherever you wanted to and travel when you wanted to?
Wow. Probably like 2015, I think and I was, about 3 years of doing it on, working online to where I felt like I was ready to take that time off. And even still, like traveling like this, sometimes it gets a little stressful if you're working on something new because you're out of your routine. As humans, we love routines. I have my 3 monitors here right now where I can multitask. I won't say multitask, but I can look at one monitor and have my notes on another one, have my Asana or my Evernote and refer to things. It's just a lot easier than one laptop, right? It's a lot different to work that way. Sure. But it's a balance. Everything is a balance. If you lose so much productivity by just working for hours on end. I didn't realize that until after the fact, but it makes sense to get up from your desk every once in a while, walk around, go outside, get some vitamin D, take a drink of water, go to the gym, come back, be revitalized and work some more, right? Versus just grinding, because then you're miserable. Then guess what? You're taking it out on your spouse and, they don't deserve that. I could just go on and on with the negatives to the grind, right? Don't get me wrong. You have to work, but there's always balance.
Sure. Cool.
So we kind of talked about like workcation. I kind of do the same type of thing. David and I actually had a podcast. I think we were talking almost exclusively about that and kind of different approaches, right? Different strokes for different folks. I kind of do the same thing. I don't recall the last day that I didn't at least do like an email or was on Facebook responding to something, right? Mm-hmm. So what is a typical, I know it's hard to say, right? Because there's variation, but like a typical day, right? Just one that you look at as like, that was kind of a normalish day. What does that look like in your life? If you're not doing like the workation thing, if you're back in Puerto Rico.
Back here, typically I'll have my calendar filled out from stuff I've put in there from Asana. That's how I usually structure my calendar. So I know various, tasks that I want to accomplish. So I'll look through that and see what I've given myself for the day. I'll check in on Slack and talk to my developers and see where we're at on certain projects. I won't bother them too much because typically I can see where we're at on a lot of things using Jira, Jira. It's one of those tools that a lot of development teams are using now. It's similar like Trello.
Project management.
Project management. Exactly. So that's kind of how we run our software. And then I have a vested interest in the ads. So I like to look at my Facebook ads. I like to look at my Google ads. If I'm running ads on Quora, Reddit, so I'll try to look at all of these things. And that's typically what I will optimize myself. Because I have outsourced that before, but I don't know. I've always felt like I just did a better job. I don't know. Maybe it's just that because I know my product better than anyone else, so I know how to word it better. But that's pretty much it. Let me pull up my Asana right now. Actually, let's see what I got.
I'm glad you asked that, Fletch, because I think that's something that a lot of people are curious about. Like, so when this starts working for me,
I have a podcast today.
What's that?
I have a podcast today, apparently.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, we better let you get to that.
I had to put that in my calendar too, strangely enough.
I have a case study that I'm putting together, so I'll probably work on that a little bit after this. And then I have a couple videos that I want to put together for a joint project that I'm working on with some people. And that's pretty much it for today. So I just try to structure my day where I'm putting in the time, but it's not just like slammed the whole day either.
Yeah.
And I love to work in the mornings. For me, I usually get up around 6:30 a.m., get my coffee, kind of walk around, put my pool vacuum on, see how the dog's doing, and then I'll come to my office and I'll just start working. And I like to work in the mornings. Usually, I'll work from 7 to 1 p.m. Then we'll go to the gym, and then I intermittent fast. So then I'll eat after that, and I may do a little bit after that. When we come back from the gym, I'll probably do a few things. Maybe take a call if I have to call someone or someone calls me, have a business meeting. And then I try to not work at night too much unless I absolutely have to. Maybe send an email out or something like that, or if there's a webinar. But for the most part, I try to break it up like that.
Do you have
schedule-wise? Oh, go ahead, David.
I was going to ask you if you had like weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly goals.
I do. It's usually tied to like an overall feature to get done, or I used to do them, financial goals. I don't really try to do that anymore. For me, it's more about hitting objectives on conversions now. So I want to convert, I want to get this level of ROI from these ads, or I want to onboard this many new users into my platform. I want my churn to go down to 6%, compared to the 7%, whatever it may be, right? So those are the kind of goals that I'll set for myself quarterly, usually.
I like that. I'm sorry, Fletch, go ahead.
No, I was just kind of circling back. We hit on identity, and I was scrolling through the little bio that you've got on the landing page for Smart Engage, and I noticed that you call yourself not only an Army veteran, but a speaker and author. What have you written, and what do you speak about, and how much thought goes into the way you refer to yourself when you introduce yourself to someone?
Well, I just recently actually spoke at Chris Munch's mastermind in Barcelona a few weeks ago. That was good. I actually spoke on Facebook ads and email marketing and just some hidden things in the algorithm. It was pretty well received, actually, so that was pretty nice. But I've co-authored 2 books with JV Zoo. I'm actually finishing writing one right now that I need to send to the publisher. We'll see where that ends up. This has been a long time in the making, though, and I've just kind of kept pushing it to the right on my calendar. And I should have probably finished it a long time ago, and I just kept making excuses. So that's on me, and I know that. In terms of introducing myself, I don't, when I speak to someone, I just, I don't know. I don't try to ever say who I am. I just let other people say that for me, I guess.
Well, you let your work speak for itself. It's one of those things where some people are so worried about getting attention and getting people to like them and getting people to appreciate them and trust them. And my kind of philosophy on that is just be so good, be so powerful, be so useful and effective that they can't ignore you anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I generally just like to know people and like understand who they are, where they come from. A lot of the times when I talk to people who are in this space, I don't even really talk business that much. I just want to, I just try to ask about their family, what they do for fun, what do they like, and what'd you do before you got into all this? Like, who are you as a person, right? That interests me. I kind of get, I don't say bored about the business side of things, but it just starts to feel very disingenuous. You go to enough of these marketing events, and I almost feel like some people talking to you are just trying to buy their time until they can let you know about what they have going on in the back. I'm just like, I mean, I'll entertain it, and that's fine. I understand you're trying to hustle, but I don't know. There's a lot to be said for the personal connection that we just don't really get anymore.
Yeah, that's actually been kind of I won't say the focus, but I guess it was my tendency, and I think as much as anything has carried me through the lack of technical skills and the lack and other bad habits that I've had is just that I truly was interested in other people, right? How they got here, what their life's like now, what they're interested in. Until you really know
Fletch,
all that.
I'm sorry. I think for you, Fletch, that comes across, every time anyone's ever spoken to you. It's like you have a big heart, and people realize that.
Oh, thanks, Dan. I truly, genuinely do like you and care about you. And yeah, when Dave was like, "Hey, we're gonna have Dan," I was like, "Oh, this is fun." Like, I don't know. I want people to understand that, like, that's as soft a skill as you're gonna get. right? Just actually being interested in or curious about or caring about somebody else. And you know, that in one way or another, you don't need to think. Some of those kind of, I guess, soft skills are ones that other people don't necessarily have or think about or focus on. And in certain ways, they can help you develop relationships with very, you know, I say powerful, very influential people with tons of resources and tons of experience and insight. And, you know, everyone's path to get where, well, from here to there, right? We rarely know exactly where we're going, but, you know, it can be powered by a lot of different things. You know, it doesn't always have to be powered by learning a new development language or by figuring out Facebook skills yourself. You know, in all likelihood, there's probably somebody that you know that's running Facebook ads that knows it decently, right? So, you know, conversations tend to, myself, when I have a conversation with people, it's usually, you know, over lunch or at a bar or having coffee, and it's usually just about life, right? Or whatever they're interested in, but it turns into business, but not usually right there, right?
Yeah.
The times that it works is like the second or third time you run into that person and they're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, I was taking a break from this. And then, you know, you exchange cards or whatever.
Yeah.
I think people, when they're kind of starting out, tend to, you've got to hustle, right? But it comes across, you know, it's kind of like, you can tell when somebody's waiting to get to their elevator pitch or whatever it might be. And a lot of times I still haven't given mine after knowing people for 6 years. So maybe because I don't know what it is, but anyway, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a component, especially of this industry. And you get around marketers, you get jaded. Well, you get to these live events and it can be even that to the extreme, right? Where everybody's just kind of there to pitch their own thing or try to do whatever with whoever. Anyway, that I wanted to kind of draw a little more attention to that. And, you know, just people being a little more self-aware and exploring other ways to accomplish the same type of task, right? Or objective, right? If you can keep a team together, that's an incredible skill to be able to do that. You don't have to be the person necessarily pushing all the buttons. So, yeah, anyway, that was kind of my, my little, drawing attention to that kind of element of work, really. You know, when I got into this, I didn't know anything about the internet and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was still trying to be a construction worker. And it just kind of morphed into this, right? You were talking about the first projects that you worked on were just, you know, selling hard goods online from a video game store that you knew about, right? There's kind of a bunch of different things that may trigger or get people involved where it's like, well, I'm not going to sell video games for the rest of my life. Like you wouldn't, like getting things right from the beginning, right? I don't think that's not really going to happen. I don't think for hardly anyone.
Yeah. I always like to joke that I was involved in e-com before anyone.
Before it was the thing.
Really early to be doing AOL e-com.
You know what my website was? Do you remember like Alta Vista when you would make a free website on there?
Yes.
Okay. that was my website. It was vgamehouse. It was like altavista subdomain, right? I'm pretty sure altavista.vgamehouse.com.
Wow. That's funny.
Oh yeah.
Funny.
I tried to find it on like the web archive. Obviously the web archive didn't even exist then, right? I was like, this has to be somewhere.
Oh, you tried to like pull it back up. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Just to like...
Oh man, I wanted to see it so bad.
That's so funny. It's so old that it's older than archive.org. That is impressive. Well, I think we've been going for about an hour and a half right now. And I want to say, Dan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I think this was amazing, at least just for me. I'm just speaking for myself. I thought this was amazing. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always good to chat with you guys.
Yeah, you're always welcome in this house. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Do you want to? We talked a lot about Smart Engage. Would you kind of have a note here to make sure we plug that again? So I want to do a quick plug. Just grab a free trial. There's a free trial for it. And then also I checked out, and they have a YouTube channel. There's not a lot of videos on there, but a couple of them are really cool. That I subscribe to it. We'll watch that. Dan, is there anything else you want to say about Smart Engage?
Yeah, I'd just say that if you find us through this podcast, just use our support desk and say, I found you through the podcast, and I will hook you guys up with another free month.
Whoa, a free month.
Yeah.
A free month on top of the already
A
free
free month
trial?
on top of the 14 days.
Whoa. Okay. So that's awesome. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to say I found through the podcast. Okay.
That's fine.
No, that's awesome, Dan. Thank you so much. That very generous of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So, any last words, Fletch?
Honestly, yeah, just awesome talking to you again, Dan. That's the thing I come away with each time. I grab my notes and I jot things down just because I like staying tuned in to you. I mean,
Cool.
you know,
Appreciate
you never know when a nugget that's going to help you see things. It just, comes. So thank you for taking some time and talking with us today.
My pleasure. I look forward to the next time we get to hang out in real life again.
I will too.
Okay, thanks for listening, and we'll see you, or you'll hear us on the next Cubicle Liberation podcast. Bye now.
Bye, guys.
See ya.